Hey all, your OS reviews. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the Wooask A9. These are AI translator buds, which are pretty cool. You can think of it as a mini phone because it supports a SIM card slot this time around, allowing you to even make phone calls that has a built-in pair of wireless buds inside. So it's kind of a multifunctional gadget. You can even use it as a dedicated MP3 player, MP4 player, or DAP, digital audio player, listening to music. So instead of fiddling around with a phone, opening up additional apps, this is designed to be a little bit more seamless. Simply tap on a key on the side to instantly begin translating and talking with someone if you are traveling and you're trying to have a real-time conversation with someone speaking a different language. Now before we take a closer look at the hardware as well as the design, just some top-line specs. This thing has a 2.8-inch IPS LCD screen, so it's still going to be super tiny and petite if you're comparing it with an average-sized smartphone that has maybe a 6.5-inch screen these days. As you can tell, kind of like a deck of cards, and can fit a little more easily into pockets as well as hands. Also, keep in mind that they have, again, wireless buds on the inside. Now other packaging contents here include a SIM card ejector tool, in addition to a standard USB Type-C cable here for charging, and the user manual envelope is pretty well presented, telling you how to access the different translation modes, supporting over 144 languages. It is pretty exhaustive, and that is because this company, Wooask, have been making these translator products for many years now. This is not their first foray into this space. So back to the design of the A9, we also have a factory pre-applied screen protector, also reminding us that this is the placement of the power key, volume rocker, as well as two buttons here for translating between two different languages. And at the bottom, you'll find access to a USB Type-C port there for charging. The back also houses a camera that can be used for translating images or scanning in documents. Now, actually, this time last year, we checked out the previous generation model, which was the A8. And some of you guys may recall that the core functionality and concept are actually quite similar. In fact, here they are side by side. However, the biggest improvement this time is definitely going to be the screen size, going from just a tiny little 2-inch panel to now 2.8 inches, despite the overall dimensions not feeling that radically different. So it's going to be much more usable, not feeling quite as crammed as on the OG A8. Also, the build quality feels like a significant improvement. Previously, it was crafted out of a soft-touch rubber material, which is fine, but on here we have more metal accents going on with the hinge, just feels a bit more robust and machined. Furthermore, the battery capacity has also improved on the latest generation revision, now having a 1,500 mAh capacity cell compared to a smaller 1,000 mAh version on the original A8. And again, there's that cellular connectivity where you can pop in a SIM card, which was missing on the A8, which was a Wi-Fi only device, giving you more flexibility. Last but not least, located underneath the A and B keys for communication is going to be a tray that holds the nano SIM card slot. Now maybe one hardware feature that isn't here I would like them to add in a future revision, maybe making it a hybrid slot so you can expand on the built-in memory, which remains at around 16 gigabytes. Especially if you're using it as a digital music player, that would have been nice to find. And it's still running, by the way, on a Qualcomm-based processor, pretty secure, and they have a metal mesh here on the outside, a little bit easier for cleaning. Also, here they are side by side with the first generation A8s, just as a rough idea. So the design of the buds are also going to be a little bit more compact as well, making them even lighter for added comfort, although the overall style and ergonomics are going to be similar. And now shifting into a quick demo of the UI, pop-up notification here whenever you open up the door as it tries to pair with the left and right sides. You can see the battery percentage of the case as well as the buds being displayed. We can see the time information in global cities as well as swipe over again to access all of the applications built into the UI in this kind of tile-like format, a little reminiscent of iOS. So jumping into voice translation first, you can also go into this feature anywhere in the UI just by pressing on the keys on the side. And it is a pretty exhaustive list of languages which are supported here, as well as dialects. So for example, if you want to choose English, you can find British accent versus US to improve the accuracy of the translation results. Let's also choose Spanish as the other language, and we can find all the different dialects where maybe some of the vernacular, as well as jargon, verb conjugation rules might be a little different. Let's try also US version of Spanish there. So in this current setup, the buds are still in the case, so we can just use the speaker and microphone built into the battery case to speak, and just tap on the A and B keys here to go through the Spanish as well as the English. Hola, esta es una prueba, 1, 2, 3.
Hello, this is a test.
And here's another test speaking in English. How does it compare? Is the accuracy good?
Y aquí hay otra prueba hablando en inglés. ¿Cómo se compara? ¿Es buena la precisión?
And overall, as you can tell, the speed is actually quite fast. Although currently we are using the online translation mode, so you can rely on both cellular or choose for Wi-Fi, compared to the offline mode, which we'll see in a moment. Here's another test, which is going to be a little bit longer. We might ramble on for a bit as well, a longer passage, and see how it does as it's translating into Spanish, a more complex test.
Aquí hay otra prueba un poco más larga. Podríamos divagar un poco, un pasaje más largo y veremos cómo se traduce al español.
So once again, accuracy is really not bad, and it's very quick as well in this current mode. The transcription might have one or two small quirks, but overall doesn't interfere with understanding what's going on, considering it was kind of a lengthy stream of consciousness dialogue. Now, popping out the buds, you can use this other mode instead. In this profile, it's telling us if we're connected to the wireless buds or not, using Bluetooth, and also the left and the right sides of the buds can act as two separate languages. So for consistency, let's stick with Spanish on the left side and then English on the right side and begin another test. So you can wear one and give the other to the second person, allowing both of you to hear the real-time translated results as you are speaking with one another, feeling a little bit more seamless and perhaps less distracting to others around you since it isn't using the speaker to blast it out. However, it might be more suitable for longer conversations, which are a little bit more private. So on here, you can tap the stem of the buds to begin talking. So I've touched the stem, and right now we are speaking in English. How does it work? Test, test, 1, 2, 3. ¿Podemos hablar en español? So not shabby again in terms of speed of recognition, and you're able to hear it a little bit more privately. Next one here is going to be the offline translation mode. So even though the A9 has both cellular and Wi-Fi, if you are really off the grid and you want to just use the downloaded language packs, you can still translate while the device is in airplane mode, for example. Now maybe the accuracy will be just a little lower compared to the online translation mode. In addition, the supported languages are going to be a little bit more limited in the offline mode. You can see the full list over here. There's not quite as many dialects, for example, that you can pick between. So if we're choosing Spanish, it's going to be a little bit more general since it is just stored on the device's built-in memory. Here's one more test speaking in English with the offline mode. How does it work? And there we go. So there's definitely a split-second longer processing in this offline mode as well, but actually not too bad. As long as you're speaking clearly enough, it can still understand the sentences. Punctuation is still getting interpreted here as well, but maybe one or two corrections would further elevate the accuracy. So the online mode might be closer to something like 98% accurate versus the offline might be just a little lower there, but still is useful to have in a pinch. Next tile is going to be the AI large language model, aka ChatGPT, that's also built on in. And interestingly, you are able to choose through several languages as well. So if you wanted to reply back in Spanish, in Chinese, for instance, you can choose these in addition to only English. You're also able to control whether the sound comes out from the wireless buds or from the speaker of the case. What are the points of interest in Seattle?
For day 1, hike at nearby trails, visit Pike Place Market, then explore the Space Needle and Chihuly Garden and Glass for stunning views and art.
So you're able to access capabilities like synthesizing information, summarization, creating ideas, brainstorming that we've come to expect from our large language model, create a haiku talking about the beauty of fall.
Leaves whisper goodbye, sunlight dances on warm breeze, seasons blend in glow.
Acting as an assistant built into the device. So here's also synthesizing some of the spec differences between some iPhones that I was asking it about. Anyways, swiping over again, we can access features here, including the dialer pad. So if you have a SIM card popped in, you'll be able to make phone calls. As a reminder, we're able to tap on the keys here to go back by one page until we exit out here onto the main screen. Similarly, we can access the messaging functionality, again using data if you have a SIM card popped in, and we have access to a pretty conventional QWERTY keyboard. Now it might seem a little bit small here at first, but thankfully the capacitive touchscreen is still relatively responsive, or you can opt for voice input instead, as well as swipe, that might make it a little bit easier. Let's check out the photo translation mode next, which is again a new feature compared to the previous gen that was missing the built-in camera. Once again, we're able to choose between two languages. Let's actually stick with the default Chinese to English just to begin with. And let's say I have something like a user manual with some documentation. I'm not sure what it's trying to say. And after a split second, you can see the translated English result here on the very bottom, as well as the photo that's captured is preserved as a copy here as well. And then you can read it back out, custom keyboard mode, what to press to trigger these different functions. Overall, it seems to be legible enough. We can also tap here to full screen the entire layout, and if you don't like the text version of the translation, you want to see it on the image, you can tap here, granting you a view which allows you to see the translated results on top of the original Chinese characters here, which might be quite helpful if you're trying to read it in a formatting like a table. That might be a little bit tricky if it's just directly parsed into plain text. That being said, because the screen is a little on the small side, it might still feel slightly cramped, which is why you also have that text version available as an alternative that you can switch back and forth between. So it's quite simple, and then you can save those images in your gallery for revisiting later on. Also, as far as supported languages are concerned, it's pretty much a similar list to what we saw from before as well. On here, it's quite exhaustive, just like on the online translation mode. We'll come back to the music function in a moment, but swiping over one more time, we can also access a voice recorder function, taking advantage of the microphone and built-in storage. So here's one more test using the microphone as well as the voice recorder. How does it work? So as you can hear, the overall quality of the mics are really not bad. So there is a bit of environmental noise cancellation. If there's some slight chatter around you, as long as you're within around a feet or two away from the device, it still seems to pick up the voice without too many problems if you want to use this for memos or just storing some quick notes. Currency calculator is also built on in, which is also useful if you are traveling and on the road as another tool or utility function. For example, let's try $1 right now is worth around $7.2 in the RMB currency. Alternatively, we can tap to change it into other currencies, let's say euros, and also see what the current conversion is. So right now, €1 is about 1.12 US dollars. All of this seems to be labeled alphabetically, and we have all the other countries that you can then swipe through to see what the currency is, as well as the flag being displayed as well. And just like the music functionality, we'll talk about the video playback in a moment, but that is essentially it as far as all the tiles that we see on screen. And you can go into more advanced settings just by tapping here. It has been, again, pretty heavily customized, so it doesn't really resemble stock Android. It has more of these oversized, colorful icons, but it is relatively easy to operate. You can change time information, 12 versus 24-hour format. And for voice broadcast, you can also choose between a female voice versus a male voice for speaking out loud into the translated result. If you want audible confirmation with the touchscreen, you can turn on the touch tones, as well as even change the wallpaper on the main home screen. Here's a couple of other examples that shows off maybe the vibrancy of the IPS display a little bit more. So if we jump back, you can see part of that here kind of peeking through, actually all looking relatively attractive on this fully laminated IPS display. And then the final sections here basically just tells you the current firmware update, the IMEI number for the SIM card slot, and also checking for any firmware updates to improve on the system performance, plus the default language of the system. The menus here can also be changed as well. Pretty exhaustive list can be shown here. So it's relatively simple and easy to operate. Again, it isn't cluttered at all. They're just giving you the core functions related to travel and translation here, plus making calls, and a DAB or digital audio player, and basically that's it. Additional functions like accessing the Google Play Store, even a web browser, have been purposefully omitted to make the system perform a little bit more smoothly using more limited resources. So you can kind of think of this as also a minimalist style digital detox type device if you must, kind of like the Lite phone that has also been gaining popularity lately just for the essentials, making basic calls and text as well as some core translation related results. You're not going to be able to install things like social media as well as games on this. Now, of course, if you're more of a wizard, you could always try exploring ways to root it, find a way to sideload APKs and bring in more of the utility tools, but I think that's also maybe defeating the purpose a little bit and isn't officially recommended at the very least, even though it's technically running here on a version of Android. That being said, maybe a couple of more utility tools that could be interesting to see, perhaps in a future software update or another revision down the line, would be bring a conventional calculator in here as well. Maybe a version of a simplified browser or a mapping client for navigation could all be interesting to think about, since it now has a more usable screen size for sure compared to the original A8, which was a lot more cramped and felt more like just a tiny peek window. Now back to the multimedia functions, it's basically recognized as just a mass storage device. When you connect it to your computer, you'll be able to drag and drop files over to the device's memory, similar to an SD card. So jumping into video here, we have just a sample clip that popped in.
A quick look at the JBL 310Cs. These are USB Type-C wired earphones.
And again, it's playing back without too many issues. Not too surprising because it is essentially just a mini Android phone. It's not going to struggle too much with again, playing back some local video files that you may have here. You can also manually swap the screen orientation to this horizontal view. Play, pause, and skip track controls can also be found down below. So pretty typical stuff if you wanted to watch something or store it on here as a backup. Now over to the music playback mode. What's interesting here is aside from the local music files, you can also access streaming through Spotify and Melon. So the Melon app might be a little bit more popular in countries like Korea, but it's similar to internet radio. You can check out trending channels for genres like rap, pop, R&B, kind of stream it back here using the Wi-Fi connectivity. It's actually pretty neat to see, and from the perspective of music quality, I have to say that the built-in wireless buds are not shabby either. They're comparable to something like Apple AirPods, so I like the fact that they are trying to merge some of these feature sets together instead of this being just a completely translation-dedicated device. They're adding a few more functions to make it more versatile. Definitely is good enough for just some casual music listening, thanks to the Qualcomm audio chip, offering clean enough sound with a nice mix of mids, trebles, and bass. Doesn't seem to have too much distortion, and connectivity was generally reliable enough. As long as I was in the range of around 10 meters away from the device, walking around, I didn't notice too much interruptions. With that being said, if you're looking for even more app support, such as, say, Pandora, or if you're using more niche apps, obviously it's not going to be present here, unless they decide to open it up further in future software updates. Anyways, with the general local music player app, from here again you're able to find any tracks that are stored on the device's memory that we dragged over from a computer, and it is able to support pretty much all the common file formats like MP3, WMA, even FLAC, lossless audio tracks can also be played, as you can tell here. You can see that it's functioning here just fine. Again, for better audio quality, you would want to use the wireless headphones here, or you can connect to other wireless headphones that are higher end if you choose to do so, because it does have a Bluetooth chip that you can flexibly pair with other devices, including speakers as well. So not bad in terms of the overall experience, but again, a expandable storage card slot, as well as maybe a analog 3.5mm headphone jack could make it even more powerful. But again, we are already seeing some strides compared to the original model. This is for sure an improvement when it comes to the general usability. Furthermore, because it is like a mini phone having cellular connectivity, it can be used as a wireless hotspot as well, a mini router device if you want to connect other devices like a laptop to it, turning it into a mini 4G router of sorts. And again, the time zone here on the main homepage for these two widgets can also be changed as part of the global clock. So if you're interested in something like this, you can learn more details in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the revised Wooask A9, kind of the AI translator all-in-one wireless headphones with now a larger than ever touchscreen display, technically running on Android. Can even be used as a miniature or backup phone now, a minimalist style device. It might not be for everyone, it's more of a niche gadget at the end of the day, but the concept here is kind of cool in my opinion. I like seeing these unconventional designs offering something a little more unique compared to what we see as the mainstream tech. That has been the Wooask A9.